Our first speaker to open the meeting this morning is going to stress to you the importance of not only buying the books and educating yourself and reading yourself, but also becoming involved in the community by educating your neighbors. You know, just as good Christians, we must witness if we're going to bring other people around to the light of the Lord. We also must do the same thing to save our country. It may amaze some of you to learn that 100 and 150 and 175 years ago, 9-year-old children in the United States knew more about their Constitution than your lawyer does today. And that's what made America so strong, was the close-knit family unit, not only with the woven around the Bible, but also woven around the Constitution and constitutional living. And Tupper Saucy likes to use the expression of constitutional living, where you good, straight in law and straight in food and everything, and you're straight in your life. And that's kind of what this whole day will be about, because we're going to have so many different speakers to talk about so many different things on constitutional living. So to urge you to get involved, and also to maybe issue a caveat of what's coming around the corner if you don't, would you welcome to this podium my good friend and yours from Norcross, Georgia, Dick Backert.
Thank you. I'm going to 4 years as an instructor in the Air Force gave me the ability to project my voice. Am I reaching you in the back? Roger, can you hear me? Okay, good. I will endeavor to speak up. That thing's driving me out of my mind. I'm here this morning to discuss a topic that's near and dear to my heart on the basis that I'm convinced that unless we reach enough of our fellow citizens, there's not much likelihood we'll pull this thing off. And so I'm here this morning to discuss the 4 E's. Count them, 4. By the way, if it's an old show business axiom that they save the best for last, does this mean the worst is first? Having said that, I'll endeavor not to be. But the 4 E's, and I've got them listed here, and let me run through them. The first is eliminate, and by that I mean not in the terminal sense of the word, eliminate, although there are some in the Patriot movement who feel that maybe that's a way to go. If you can't educate the opposition out of office or elect them out of office, there are other methods to use. I reject that out of hand. It's not the way to go, for sure. We can eliminate these people, though, who are causing a lot of our problem, and that's to vote them out of office. But I suggest that the people we elect are simply reflections of us as a people. And it was Franklin who said only a righteous and God-fearing people can preserve a Republican form of government. If we lost that particular form of government, it's because we as a people have failed to be a righteous and God-fearing people. But I would suggest that if you haven't done so, read Tupper's recent Main Street Journal, wherein he refers to the 2 major commandments. And if you need help with what they are, you're probably in the wrong group this morning. You need to be down with the CFR gang downtown, because they don't understand those commandments, for sure. The other is evacuate. That's the second E. If you can't change the system in which you're living, or forced to live, or have to suffer to live, you may leave. I have some friends who are frankly living in the hills right now. They feel pretty safe up there. I corresponded recently with a fellow who's got a 100-acre compound up in North Georgia. He's got a self-contained generator, and he's got well water, and he's got a sewage treatment plant. I mean, he's ready to go. But I asked him one question he had difficulty with. I said, does your name appear on the title of that property down at the courthouse? He said, well, yeah. I said, well, I'd remind you what happened to the French aristocrats who thought they could escape the first communist revolution in France. They did the same thing. It just took them a little longer, but they walked up the scaffold to the guillotine, too. So running off to the mountains is not the answer. We stand our ground. I've got a friend who's frankly considering leaving the country. But I've told him, he's looking at a Caribbean island. I've told him, look, pal, the reason you're safe down there and they don't have socialism today is because we don't yet have it completely here. And if you think you'll be safe as the citizen of a collapsed economic and social order in the United States, forget it. You'll simply die there. Or you'll go to jail there instead of dying or going to jail here. We can educate. And this is the one I really want to spend a little time on. Books, tapes, you'll find every one of these meetings equipped with a table of free literature and literature for a price. We're the hardcore, folks. The fact that we're spending a glorious Saturday morning in here tells me that we've got something on our minds that needs expression. And the way to get that same mindset to others is to educate them. Mr. Beckman has a complete table of books and literature here. I suggest that you leave here with as much of that as you can afford. Bill has a table in the back. There's free material over there. Let me share with you a couple of little Mickey Mouse schemes that I use, or one that I use, that I find rather effective. It may not be Mickey Mouse. Tupper thought enough of it to share it with the readers of the Main Street Journal about a year ago. But every one of us gets junk mail at home, and in that junk mail will invariably be the self-addressed return stamped envelope. We don't waste envelopes at my house. Those envelopes go back in the mail with literature, patriot literature, a little tract, a flyer, whatever. Anybody with access to a copy machine has the ability to do that. And that's a minor, minor contribution. But folks, there's a human being at the other end of that mail system. And there's a human being who slits that envelope open and pulls that piece of paper out. And we may get lucky and they may read it. And if they read it, they may be affected by it. And if they're affected by it, they may join us. And if they join us, we might change this country. Small gesture. Small gesture. I've got some people who are sending me junk mail who are now printing on the envelope for return of authorized materials only. Apparently, I'm not the only one doing that. Letters to the editor. The papers here in town, the Atlanta Urinal and Constipation, as I like to refer to them, are both outlets for the Cox communication chain. Mrs. Cox is a member of the CFR, and she's plugged in as high as you can get. So you're not going to have a lot of impact on their editorial department down there, but other people are going to read those letters. I've done a lot of good prospecting in the letters to the editor. There are other people out there who feel the way we do, and they express it. And if they think enough about it to express it, that means they may have enough ambition and motivation and gumption to come in with us. We have to try to reach those people. So prospect in the letters to the editor. If this guy gets a letter from me, he may think I'm a kook. But if he gets a note or a copy of his letter with a, well done, we agree, contact me at such and such, from 40 or 50 of us, he knows he's got some company out there. We're looking for the remnant. It's never a big group. It never has been. God doesn't work through large groups. He never has. If you're capable of doing so, speak. Train yourself, arm yourself with the information you need, and speak. Offer yourself to civic groups, church groups. They're crying for people to come in and talk to them. Many of them, I've had cases where I know cases where programs have been canceled because a speaker was not available. Well, if you know about that program and they know that you're available on a last-minute call-in basis, they'll call you maybe. And you may have a chance to expose our particular philosophy to a group of people who've never heard it before. But let me share this with you. And I've been as guilty of it as anyone else. When I cranked up in this thing 8 years ago, my first inclination was to grab my fellow citizen by the lapels, hold him about 6 inches off the ground with his back against the wall, and talk to him very loudly for about 20 minutes. That ain't going to get it. You've lost him the minute you hike him off the ground. We need to use gentle persuasion. And we can't... What does a baby eat when a baby first emerges into this world? Mother's milk. Pablum. Working its way up in a scale of easily digestible, easy-to-eat materials into the hamburgers and the Big Macs and all the other junk food we consume. I'm sorry, Jan. Okay, the good health, nutritious health foods that Jan is an advocate of over here. That's how you bring a baby along. We've got to do this with these philosophical and ideological babies we're dealing with. The people out there don't even know we're here to deal with solutions or prospective solutions. Most of those folks don't even know we've got a problem. But they're coming to realize it, and they'll come to realize it more and more as time goes by. So we have to reach them with information. Let Freedom Ring. It's a message service we operate here in town. Number's 4412824, I think. But I leave those cards everywhere. I dispatch my kids into the malls with hands full of them, and they leave them in the women's and the men's suit department. They'll leave them in pockets of coats and jackets on the rack. And we've recruited people on that basis. There are people out there who don't even know we exist. That's half the battle. Radio call-in talk shows. WSB is an all-talk format here in town after 6 or 7 o'clock, starting with Mohan and then Ludlow, and then, they do music after Ludlow, I think. But we've got about an 8-hour spread in there, 6 or 8 hour spread, where we can reach other people with a 50,000-watt station that goes all over the eastern United States. And I listen to those programs, and you hear some incredibly resonant conversation. I mean, stuff we can relate to. And they're not us. I mean, they're not our people in terms of being with us in this meeting today. But they're philosophically with us. They just don't know we exist yet. We need to try to reach those people. Talk to people. Individually or as groups. One-on-one's the most effective way. And as I said earlier, we're the so-called hardcore, and if we don't get this job done, who's going to do it? Who's going to do it? I want to expose you to a couple of government programs that I've recently become aware of. Acronyms are kind of fun. That's an initial letter forming a word. And I've become aware of an old government program that's been in existence for over 150 years or perhaps longer. And that's the centralized redistribution of income and material wealth, or enslavement. That's the crime program that the government's been operating on us, sovereign citizens, for, lo, these many years. There's also another program that we've enacted on ourselves, by and large, and that's the Stop Learning About Virtually Everything program, or SLAVE. And that's the surest way to become a slave. Benjamin Franklin said, a nation of well-informed men who've been taught to know and prize the rights which God has given them cannot be enslaved. It is in the region of ignorance that tyranny begins. We're not in the region of ignorance, folks. We're covered up with it. We're lost in it. We lost the rule books. We lost the map 70 years ago, the Constitution. We have another program very similar to this that we've foisted on ourselves that, for those who are not quite ready for this particular level of activity, and that's the Stop Educating Relatives, Friends, and Strangers, or the SERFs program. Many of us have been guilty of participating in that particular program as well. And then we have the other program for another level of society, and that's the studied and totally uninterrupted, it's easy for me to say, pursuit of intentionally idiotic disinformation, or the STUPID program. And that's how most people are operating today. It's incredible. You've seen it, I've seen it. You try to talk to somebody, engage someone in one of these discussions about one of these topics, and they just switch you off. They don't want to talk about it. There's a conscious and aggressive pursuit of ignorance in this country. I didn't know why until I got a copy of a Greg Brzezinski newsletter about a month ago. And it's a quote from the Scriptures, and if I had any questions that the Scriptures dealt with every area of life, this removed all doubt. It's Ecclesiastes 1:18. This describes me. It jumped off the page when I read it. Quote, "In much wisdom there is much grief, and increasing knowledge results in increasing pain." He's talking about me. Because the more I've learned about the disastrous nature of our condition, the more pain I've felt, the more suffering I've felt, the more grief I've felt. But we have to, and we will get out of this mess, folks. Let me acquaint you with another program that, that we're going to institute here today, and I hope you share this with as many of your friends as you can. That's the FREE program, or Find and Recruit Everyone Educable. And that's really the bottom line, because if we don't find those other folks, we ain't going to do it. Now let me get to the last and most important E, at least from my perspective, and that is evangelize. There may be some non-Christians in this room, I'm not sure, but we were a Christian republic at one time. We need to be again if we're going to pull this off. We could get the Constitution back in full force and effect this afternoon at 12 o'clock and lose it at 3 p.m. for the same reason we lost it the first time. We've stopped being a godly and righteous people. We've drifted so far from our Christian constitutional moorings on which our republic was founded, and we're drifting in a philosophical Bermuda Triangle for over 150 years. And we've struck the reef of Marxism, statism, and collectivism, and we're close to going down in a sea of secular humanism. That's my description of what's happening here. At Hosea 4:6, the prophet laments that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. He was referring to knowledge of the Creator and the natural laws about which many have spoken and written, most recently Tupper in the current issue of the Main Street Journal. And Benjamin Franklin that said only a righteous and God-fearing people can preserve a republican form of government. When I first met Tupper in the hotel room at the Hilton down here, what, a year and a half, 3 years ago, I think it was, Bill? My, how time flies when you're having fun. I asked him if he thought the American people were a righteous people, and he responded rather quickly by saying yes. I disagreed with Tupper at that time, and I do today. I don't think that we are a righteous people. Were we a righteous people, we wouldn't have to have this meeting today. But Tupper likes to quote the ancient Chinese proverb that says, when the pupil is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, I've updated that. When the American people are ready to assume the responsibility required to reclaim their frivolously forfeited freedoms, they will do so. But that's our job. That requires education. And we have to be educators, all of us. Educate. Be an evangelist. Go forth and do both of those things. The results of our failure to succeed in that undertaking are too grim to contemplate. I hope you draw much wisdom, material, and information from this seminar today. I know Mr. Beckman has just a wealth of information he wants to share with you. Nord Davis will be here a little later, and we're glad you're here. We would have hoped for a larger crowd, but as I said earlier, the remnant never has been a big group. But appreciate the chance to talk to you. Thank you.
I brought up the subject of what's going to happen after we take over the government. We become responsible then for administrating, 250 million people. And there was no answers. No one had given any thought to economics. How are you going to clothe and feed these people? The only thing that I could get was that they expected that the Cubans and the North Vietnamese and the Chinese and the Russians would all want to occupy different portions of the United States. They also believed that their immediate responsibility would be to protect against what they called the counter-revolution. And they felt that this counter-revolution could best be guarded against by creating and establishing re-education centers in the Southwest, where we would take all the people who needed to be re-educated into the new way of thinking and teach them how things were going to be. I asked, well, what is going to happen to those people that we can't re-educate, that are die-hard capitalists? And the reply was that they'd have to be eliminated. And when I pursued this further, they estimated that they would have to eliminate 25 million people in these re-education centers. And when I say eliminate, I mean kill. 25 million people. I want you to imagine sitting in a room with 25 people, most of which have graduate degrees from Columbia and other well-known educational centers, and hear them figuring out the logistics for the elimination of 25 million people. And they were dead serious.